On March 23, 2022, something happened that most people never heard about. A bridge, not the kind you drive over but the kind that connects two separate blockchain networks, was drained of $625 million. It didn't take a team of hundreds. It didn't take weeks of brute force attacks. It took one forged signature, and it was over before most of the world woke up. This is the story of the Ronin Network hack, how it happened, why nobody noticed for 6 days, and what it tells us about the invisible infrastructure holding billions of dollars together. To understand this hack, you need to understand what Ronin was and why it existed. Axie Infinity was one of the biggest games in the world in 2021, a blockchain-based game where players bred, battled, and sold digital creatures called Axies. At its peak, it had over 2.5 million daily active users, many of them in the Philippines and Vietnam, where players were earning more from the game than from their day jobs. But Axie Infinity ran on Ethereum, and Ethereum at the time was slow and expensive to use. Every transaction cost fees called gas, and with millions of players making microtransactions every day, those costs added up fast. So the developers, a Vietnamese company called Sky Mavis, built a solution. They created Ronin, a separate, faster, cheaper blockchain specifically designed for Axie Infinity. And to connect it to Ethereum, they built a bridge. A bridge, in blockchain terms, is exactly what it sounds like. You deposit assets on one side, you receive equivalent assets on the other. Want to move your Ethereum into the Ronin ecosystem? Deposit it. The bridge locks it up and issues you wrapped tokens on the Ronin side. Want a cash out? Reverse the process. By early 2022, that bridge was holding over $600 million in cryptocurrency. Ethereum, USDC, real money, locked in a smart contract secured by a handful of cryptographic keys. Those keys were about to be stolen. The Ronin bridge was protected by something called a multi-signature system, or multi-sig for short. Think of it like a bank vault with 9 locks. To open it, to authorize a withdrawal, you needed 5 of those 9 key holders to agree. Each key holder had a private cryptographic key. Get 5 signatures, the transaction goes through. Get fewer than 5, it's rejected. Sky Mavis controlled 4 of those validator nodes. 5 were controlled by an independent organization called the Axie DAO, a decentralized group designed to add an extra layer of trust and separation. On paper, it was a reasonable security model. The problem was what happened 9 months earlier, in June 2021. Sky Mavis had asked the Axie DAO for temporary help processing a high volume of transactions. The DAO granted Sky Mavis temporary access to sign transactions on their behalf. It was supposed to be short-term, but when the arrangement ended, nobody revoked the access. The Axie DAO's permissions were quietly sitting there, forgotten, unrevoked. Now fast forward to March 2022. Researchers believe, and the U.S. government later confirmed, that a hacking group called Lazarus Group had been targeting Sky Mavis for months. Lazarus Group is tied to North Korea's government. They are one of the most sophisticated state-sponsored hacking organizations on the planet, responsible for over $1 billion in crypto theft. Here's how they got in. A Sky Mavis employee received a job offer, a lucrative one, sent via LinkedIn. They went through what appeared to be a thorough interview process. Then they received a PDF, an offer letter. They opened it. That PDF contained malware. The moment it was opened, Lazarus had a foothold inside Sky Mavis's internal network. They moved laterally through the systems, quietly, over days or weeks, and eventually reached the validator nodes. They stole 4 private keys from Sky Mavis directly, 4 keys. They needed 5. And then they found the forgotten permission. The Axie DAO access that was never revoked, that gave them a 5th signature. 5 of 9. Threshold met. Vault open. What happened next might be the most chilling part of this story. Nothing. For 6 days, nothing. On March 23rd, the attacker executed 2 transactions. The first drained 173,600 Ethereum. The second drained 25.5 million USDC. Together at the prices that day, that was $625 million. And nobody noticed. Not Sky Mavis, not the Axie DAO, not any automated monitoring system that was watching the bridge. It wasn't until March 29th, 6 days later, that a user tried to withdraw funds from the bridge and discovered it was empty. They reported it. Sky Mavis investigated, and only then did the team realize what had happened nearly a week earlier. 6 days. In 6 days, $625 million had moved through blockchain mixers and exchanges, being laundered, dispersed, and obfuscated across dozens of wallets. The attacker had used Tornado Cash, a cryptocurrency mixer, to begin washing the funds. They moved assets across chains, broke large sums into smaller ones. The money was already deep in the laundry cycle before the alarm was even raised. This gap, the 6-day detection gap, became almost as controversial as the hack itself. A bridge holding over $500 million had no real-time monitoring in place that would flag 2 enormous unauthorized withdrawals. The fallout was immediate and severe. Ronin's token, RON, dropped over 20% within hours of the announcement. The broader crypto market reacted with alarm. Users who had funds locked in the Ronin ecosystem were suddenly staring at the possibility that their money was simply gone. Sky Mavis scrambled. They paused the Ronin bridge entirely, though by that point there was nothing left to protect. They contacted exchanges, asking them to freeze any funds that could be traced back to the hack. Binance managed to freeze roughly $5.8 million out of $625 million. The U.S. Treasury Department got involved. They attributed the hack to Lazarus Group, the North Korean state-sponsored unit, and added a cryptocurrency address connected to the attacker to the sanctions list. This was a significant escalation. It meant any U.S. person or entity that helped process those funds could face federal penalties. The FBI later confirmed North Korea's involvement. As for Sky Mavis, they made an unusual decision. They announced they would reimburse all affected users. To do this, they raised $150 million in a funding round led by Andreessen Horowitz and combined it with their own treasury funds to cover the losses. The Ronin Bridge eventually reopened in late June 2022 with significantly upgraded security. So what actually went wrong here? Because this wasn't just bad luck. There were multiple compounding failures, and each one is a lesson. Lesson 1. Forgotten access is a weapon. The single most critical failure in this attack was an access permission that was never revoked. Sky Mavis had been granted temporary validator access by the AXI DAO. When that arrangement ended, nobody cleaned it up. In security, this is called an orphaned credential, an account or permission that outlives its purpose. It happens constantly in corporate environments. Access gets granted for a project. The project ends. Nobody removes the access. Months later, someone exploits it. The Ronin hack just happened to be a $625 million version of that mistake. Lesson 2. Spear phishing still works. The initial intrusion, the entry point that started everything, was a fake job offer on LinkedIn and a malicious PDF. This is called spear phishing, a targeted, personalized attack designed to trick a specific person. No zero-day exploit, no exotic vulnerability, just a convincing offer and a bad attachment. Even sophisticated, security-aware organizations fall for this. Lesson 3. Monitoring is not optional. $500 million left a bridge in 2 transactions, and it took 6 days to notice. Any serious financial security posture requires real-time alerting on large anomalous transactions. This wasn't a slow bleed, it was 2 massive withdrawals. The absence of any alarm system capable of catching that is a fundamental operations failure. Lesson 4. Decentralization is only as strong as its implementation. The multisig model was sound in theory. 9 validators, 5 required. The problem was that the actual distribution of control wasn't as decentralized as it appeared. Through the forgotten permission, one entity effectively controlled 5 of 9 keys. The design was right. The execution broke it. The Ronin hack wasn't the result of some genius-level, unprecedented attack. It was the result of normal human failures, a permission left open, an email attachment clicked, a monitoring gap nobody filled. That's what makes it so important to understand. The most expensive hacks in history rarely exploit the most exotic vulnerabilities. They exploit the ordinary ones, the ones that pile up quietly, unnoticed, until the day someone decides to look. $625 million. 1 forged signature, 6 days of silence. If you found this useful, subscribe to Cyber Declassified. Every week we break down the hacks, threats, and security stories that actually matter. No jargon, no noise, just the truth about how this world really works.